The knock jolted me awake. Sharp and rhythmic 3 raps. Pause. To more cutting through the quiet hum of the space heater. I squinted at the digital clock on my nightstand. 3:02 a.m. The cottage sat miles from the nearest town. No cell service unless I balanced on the porch roof's edge. And the only visitor I'd had in 2 weeks was a mail carrier with a junk letter. I swung my legs over the bed, my bare feet icy on the pine floor, and grabbed the crowbar I'd left by the door after patching a loose board last weekend. I crept down the hallway, the crowbar heavy in my clammy palm, and pressed my eye to the peephole. Nothing but the porch lights, golden haze bleaching the overgrown grass, the distant hoot of an owl scratching at the dark. I flipped the deadbolt and chain, yanking the door open, fast, still empty. The wind nipped at my thin nightshirt, carrying the faint rot of pine needles and something else, metallic, like old, dried blood seeping into soil. Fumbling for my phone in the pocket of my flannel night pants, I unlocked it and pulled up the security cam app. The doorbell feed loaded slow, buffering for a second before showing the porch from 3:01 a.m. onward. No shadow, no figure, no stray animal, just static, until the timestamp hit 3:02, and the audio spike of the knock matched a single frame where the door SA edge warped, like heat rising off blacktop on a summer day. My throat went dry, sticking together when I tried to swallow. I replayed the clip 3 times, leaning against the door frame to steady myself. The warp was gone by the next frame, so fast I'd have missed it if I hadn't been staring holes in the screen. I checked the backyard cam, next, nothing but the rusted swing set my mom had put up for me in 19... swaying slightly, even though there was no wind to move it. The attic cam was black, like the feed had cut out entirely. I slammed the door home, sliding the chain and deadbolt into place before pressing my back to the wood. My heart thundered so loud I could hear it over the blood rushing in my ears. This wasn't a branch scraping the siding, wasn't a raccoon rummaging in the garbage. The realtor had warned me the cottage had quirky local history, but I'd laughed it. Off old houses always came with silly ghost stories, right? I tiptoed to the bottom of the attic stairs, my crowbar raised half-heartedly. The attic cam had been working an hour ago, when I'd checked to make sure the boxers of Mom's things were dry after last week's rain. I reached up, twisting the brass doorknob stuck. It wouldn't turn, wouldn't budge. An inch, like something heavy was pressing against the other side. Then I heard it. 3 raps. Pause. 2 more. Soft, but unmistakable, from the other side of the door. I stumbled back, tripping over the frayed edge of the hallway rug and landing hard on my tailbone. The crowbar clattered to the floor with a loud clang. The knocking stopped, and for a long, shaky second, there was nothing but my ragged, gasping breathing. Then my phone pinged. The attic cam feed was live again. I snatched it up, and my scream caught in my throat. A shape, tall and too thin, its outline blurry like it was out of focus, standing right behind the door. It had no face, no discernible features, just a dark mass that seemed to absorb the faint light from the attic's bare bulb. I fumbled for the pan button on the cam app, trying to shift the view, but the feed was frozen on that frame. The doorknob jiggled once, slow and deliberate, then again, harder, like whatever was on the other side was testing the lock. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the crowbar, and back toward the kitchen, where I kept a heavy-duty flashlight and a can of bear spray. The kitchen light flickered when I flipped the switch, buzzing loudly for a few seconds before staying on. I grabbed the bear spray from under the sink, shaking it hard until I heard the slosh of liquid inside, and shone the flashlight at the windows all closed, all locked with the old iron latches my mom had installed. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from my sister. Sent an hour prior. You up? Called 3X. No answer. Be careful up there alone. I tried to reply, but the no service icon glared back at me, taunting. Then the knocking started again, this time from the kitchen window, same exact pattern. 3 and 2. Ispunaron. Flashlight beam slamming into the glass so hard I thought it might crack. Nothing. Not even a bug crawling on the other side, but the audio from the doorbell cam played through my phone's speaker, loud and clear, the knock echoing twice, like it was coming from both the window and the hallway at once. My hands started to shake so bad I almost dropped the flashlight, its beams swinging wildly across the walls. I remembered the box of Mom's journals tucked under the living room couch, the ones she'd kept when she was my age, living in the cottage alone after my grandpa passed. I bolted to the living room, dropping the crowbar by the couch's arm, and ripped the lid off the cardboard box. The top journal was dated in 1997, its pages yellowed and brittle at the edges. I flipped to the last entry, my fingers trembling so bad I could barely hold the book open. 3:01 a.m. It knocked again. The cam shows nothing. Same has before. I think it's angry I stopped answering the first time. It's not asking anymore. It's demanding. The locket. It wants. The locket I found in the attic. I hid it in the floorboard by my bedroom window. If I'm gone when Leela gets here, tell her to burn it. Don't let it take her to you. Don't let it get in. My blood ran cold, so cold I could feel it in my fingertips. I'd found that locket last week, tucked in a jewelry box with Mom's old earrings, and I'd been wearing it around my neck ever since. I clawed at the chain around my throat, the metal digging into my skin until it left red marks. The locket was ice cold, like it had been sitting in a snowbank for hours. Even Tugidi had it against my chest all night. The knocking started again, this time from every wall at once, the rhythm deafening, like 1,000 fists pounding to break through the wood and plaster. The living room light bulb shattered suddenly, sending shards of glass raining down on the couch and floor. I ducked, covering my head with my arms, and the locket burned against my chest, hot enough to make me yelp. When the knocking stopped, the cottage was eerily silent. No crickets chirping, no wind rustling the trees, no hum from the space heater in my bedroom. I stood up slowly, brushing glass shards off my nightshirt and arms, and stared down the hallway to my mom's old bedroom. The door was wide open. Eben Tugi declosed and latched it that morning. A faint, sickly blue glow seeped out from under the door, not like any lamp or candle I owned. I grabbed the crowbar again, my grip white-knuckled, and crept toward the bedroom. The blue glow got brighter as I approached, and I could hear a soft, warbling sound, like a radio tuned to a dead station. Static, mixed with something that might have been a song once. When I reached the door, I peered inside and froze. The floorboard by the window was pried up, its edges splintered, and the locket was sitting on the nightstand, open, showing the photo of me and Mom when I was 5, grinning covered in ice cream. I lunged for the locket, but before my fingers could touch the cold metal, the bedroom door slammed shut behind me with a bang that shook the walls. Ispunarun yanking on the doorknob. The warbling sound got louder, almost painful to listen to, and I turned back to the nightstand. The photo in the locket had changed. Mom's face was gone, replaced by that blurry, featureless shape from the attic cam. It seemed to lean forward, like it was staring at me through the tiny frame, and my breath hitched in my throat. I stumbled back into the dresser, knocking over a stack of old perfume bottles that clattered to the floor. I grabbed Mom's old Zippo lighter from the top of the dresser. I'd filled it with fluid last week to light candles and flicked it open. The flame wavered, ten-statted. I held it to the locket, but it didn't burn. It didn't even warm up. Instead, the flame turned a bright, unnatural blue, and the shape in the photo seemed to smile, if something without a mouth could smile. The knocking started again, this time coming from inside the locket itself, faint but distinct. I screamed, throwing the locket across the room as hard as I could. It hit the wall with a clink and clattered to the floor, but the knocking didn't stop it. Got louder, deeper, like something was trying to claw its way out of the tiny metal case. I ran to the window, yanking it open. The drop to the ground was only 6 feet, but the area below was thick with thorny blackberry bushes I'd been putting off trimming. I didn't care. I climbed onto the sill and jumped. The thorns tore at my nightshirt and legs, leaving stinging, bleeding cuts in their wake. But I scrambled to my feet anyway, ignoring the pain. I ran toward the driveway, where my beat-up Honda was parked. Keys still in the ignition. I'd left them there yesterday when I unloaded groceries in a hurry. But when I reached the car, the driver's side door was wide open, and the interior light was flickering on and off. I froze, staring at the car. The radio was on, playing that same warbling static I'd heard in the bedroom. Ten primera sa, W. It's a locket, sitting on the dashboard, glinting in the dim, flickering light. Primera bas que dawai, shaking my head so hard my hair flew into my face. There was no way it could have gotten here that fast. I'd thrown it in the bedroom. I'd jumped out the window. I'd run 50 feet. The sound of slow, deliberate footsteps crunched behind me on the gravel driveway. I didn't turn around. I spun and ran back toward the cottage, my legs burning, and scrambled up the porch steps, 2 at a time. The front door was ajar, and I darted inside, slamming it shut and sliding both the chain and deadbolt into place. I needed to get to the porch roof for cell service if I could climb up there. Maybe I'd get one bar to call 911. I climbed onto the couch, then onto the coffee table, and reached up for the roof's edge, but my phone pinged again. Primera? Look down. I crawled to the phone, picking it up with shaky hands, and scrolled through the doorbell cam's history, going back a full week. Every single night, at exactly 3:02 a.m., the same knock appeared in the audio. Every single night, the same warped frame, the same empty porch. I'd slept through all of them until tonight, lulled into a false sense of safety by the quiet of the woods. Mom's journal entry echoed in my head, loud and clear. It's not asking anymore, it's demanding. A floorboard creaked behind me, slow and loud. I turned, and this time, I saw it. It was standing in the hallway, its outline still fuzzy, but now I could make out 2 long arms that bent at the elbows the wrong way, fingers that curved like claws. It tilted its head, and the knocking came from where its mouth should be no sound at first. Then the familiar 3 raps. Pause. 2 more. The air around it felt cold. So cold. My breath fogged. The entity stopped, then let out a sound like static, mixed with a child's scream that made my ears ring and my head throb. It lunged at me, and I ducked, scrambling past it into the kitchen. I grabbed the bear spray from the counter, twisting the safety cap off, and sprayed it directly at the entity. The mist passed through it, but for a split second. That gave me just enough time to run to the attic stairs. I yanked the doorknob this time. It turned easily. I pushed the door open and climbed the stairs 2 at a time, slamming it shut behind me and wedging the crowbar under the doorknob. The attic was dark, but I could see the stacks of boxers against the wall, labeled in Mom's handwriting. Lila's toys, old clothes, journals, and letters. I grabbed the nearest box labeled journals, tearing it open. The box was full of old notebooks and loose papers. I flipped through them frantically, looking for something, anything, that could tell me how to make the entity go away. Then I found it a yellowed newspaper clipping, dated 1952, folded in Alf. The headline read, "Local boy, 10, vanishes from cottage. Last seen knocking on neighbors' doors at 3 a.m. The back of the clipping had a handwritten note in Mom's cursive. Burn the locket and everything it touches. It feeds on attention. Stop answering. I patted my pocket, and my fingers closed around the locket when... Had I picked it up again? It was cold enough to hurt my palm. I fumbled for the Zippo lighter, flicking it open, but the flame died as soon as I held it near the metal. The attic door shook violently, the crowbar bending under the force of whatever was on the other side. I looked around, panicking, and saw the old cast-iron wood stove in the corner. Cold, but still connected to the chimney. I ran to the stove, yanking the door open, and grabbed a crumpled stack of newspaper from the floor, stuffing it inside. I flicked the Zippo again, this time lighting the newspaper's edge. The flame caught quickly, and I dropped the locket and the newspaper clipping into the fire, slamming the stove door shut and latching it. The entity let out a scream that shook the attic rafters, so loud I had to cover my ears. The attic door burst open, the crowbar flying across the room and hitting the wall with a clang. I backed away from the stove, watching as the locket finally burned its metal melting into a puddle. The photo inside, curling into ash, the entity's form started to unravel, blurring more and more until it was just a cloud of static in the air, swirling wildly. It let out one last, gurgling scream, then vanished completely. The knocking stopped. The stove's fire died down to glowing embers. The attic went quiet, except for my ragged, gasping breathing. I stood there for a long minute, frozen, waiting for the knocking to start again, waiting for the entity to reappear. When it didn't, I climbed down the attic stairs slowly, my legs shaking so bad I almost fell halfway down. The cottage was in shambles, Broken glass, dented walls, torn wallpaper, overturned furniture, but the air felt lighter. No more cold spots. No more faint smell of rot. I grabbed my phone and climbed onto the porch roof. And tease time, one tiny bar of cell service popped up. I called 911, my voice cracking as I tried to explain what had happened, how something had been knocking, how the security cams showed nothing, how I'd burned a locket to make it stop. The dispatchee was calm, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. She said a sheriff's deputy would be there in about an hour. The roads were narrow and winding. I sat on the roof, watching the sky lighten, the first hints of pink and orange painting the tops of the pine trees. I didn't dare go back inside alone. When the deputy arrived, a stocky man with a gray beard and a flannel shirt, he walked through the cottage, shaking his head. He said there was no sign of forced entry except for the splintered floorboard in the bedroom and the melted metal in the wood stove. He asked if he'd been drinking, if I was under stress. I didn't argue. I just handed him Mum's journal and the remaining newspaper clippings, telling him the whole story again, even though I knew he didn't believe me. He took the journal, his expression softening a little, and said he'd heard the old stories about the cottage, about the boy who'd vanished. People around here don't talk about it much, he said, tucking the journal into his patrol car's console. He helped me pack a duffel bag with clothes and my laptop, and I followed him to the cruiser, glancing back at the cottage one last time. The doorbell cam flickered for a split second, and I thought I saw a blurry shape standing on the porch. I looked away quickly, climbing into the passenger seat. The deputy drove down the long, gravel driveway, the cottage shrinking behind us until it was just a tiny spot in the trees. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from the security cam app. Motion detected at 3:02 a.m. I stared at the screen for a second, then pressed the power button until the screen went black. I leaned my head back against the seat, closing my eyes, and tried not to think about the knocking, tried not to wonder if it was really gone.